Hi again, Risa here, back with another episode of Ask Risa. This is my weekly video series where I give you tips and advice and guidance if you are trying to plan your own wedding. My name is Risa Weaver Enyon, and I am a wedding planner based in Sacramento, California. My company is Risa James Events, and you can find all of my social media links and my website link down below the video in the description. So this week, I want to talk about plus ones when it comes to your wedding guest list. This can be a very sticky situation. And your guest list is something you have to put together right at the beginning, as soon as you get engaged, before you start looking at really anything, because you can't venue shop without having at least a ballpark idea of how many guests you're gonna have. And you can't get catering quotes without knowing, again, ballpark guest count. So you need to at least put together a preliminary list. I always advise people to start big and whittle down from there. So include all of your family and friends that you might want to invite, and all of your fiance's family and friends. And if your parents or your fiance's parents are contributing to the wedding, they also will get to contribute some names to the guest list. So, get everything at the beginning and see what your top line number looks like. And then you might want to start cutting depending on budget, because of course the more people you have, the more expensive your wedding will be, mainly because food and beverage are your biggest single line item expenses, and the more guests you have, the more food and drink you have. So when you're putting together your list, you start to think about who comes as a pair, who is an individual. So married couples always have to be invited together. There's no wiggle room with this one at all. If they're married, they have to come together or be invited together. If you have a friend and she's married to some guy that you don't like, that's too bad. You're gonna have to invite them as a pair anyway. To be honest with you, you're not really going to spend that much time with this guy that you don't like at your wedding anyway, because you're going to be busy. There's going to be a lot of other people there. You will have a lot going on. You're not going to spend very much time with any one individual other than maybe your wedding party and obviously your new spouse. So, if you don't like somebody's spouse, it's not the end of the world. Sure, you may not want them at your wedding, but if you want your friend at your wedding, you're going to have to invite the spouse as well. That's just the way it goes. Same thing with engaged couples. They are a social unit. As soon as they get engaged, they become a social unit as a whole. So they have to be invited together, just like a married couple would. Couples that are living together also should be invited as a social unit, because they have made a commitment to each other, even if it's not quite to the level of being engaged or married. It's possible they won't ever get engaged or married, yet they've still committed to living together. So you should invite them together. It's the nice, polite thing to do. Then you get to couples who are in a long-term relationship but not living together or engaged or married. And that situation is a little bit more discretionary. It is certainly preferable and polite to invite their significant other with them, especially because most people don't like to attend social occasions without their partner, especially if they've been together for a while and they're used to attending social events together. And you also face the possibility that if you invite only half of the couple, then the half you invited won't come, because if they can't bring their partner, then they probably won't want to come at all. So, if you want that person to be there, the nice thing to do is to invite their long-term partner. But when you get to people who are only casually dating, it's way more discretionary. If your budget just doesn't allow it, you are not obligated to invite girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. If they are, let's say they've been together less than a year. That's a reasonable cutoff. People who've been together more than a year, that's a long-term relationship. Again, it's nice to invite them. It's nice for people to be able to bring their significant other, especially if they're not going to know anyone else at the wedding, then at least they have someone with them that they know. But if your budget won't allow it, if your space constraints won't allow it, it's perfectly acceptable to invite people who aren't in a serious relationship just by themselves without a plus one. And these rules apply to family members just as well as they apply to friends. So if you have, a bunch of cousins who you don't know very well, and, your mom wants you to invite them, but it's not super important to you and they're not engaged, married, or whatever, you don't need to invite them with a +1. You don't need to give them the opportunity to bring a guest, especially if it's a guest you're not going to know. You barely know the cousins, and you're really not going to know anyone that they might bring as a guest. So I give you permission to not invite those people with a +1. Just a word about how to indicate that someone gets a +1. If someone's in a relationship, you should always try to get the person's name, the other person's name, the partner's name, because you want the invitation to be addressed to both of them. And if they come, you're going to need the name anyway for the escort cards so they know where they're sitting. So you might as well just get that information up front. With the and guest terminology, that should never be used on an exterior envelope, the one that has the address on it. Most invitations used to contain 2 envelopes. There would be the outer envelope where the formal address and the actual mailing address would go, and then there would be an inner envelope where the more informal titles, names would go, and then the invitation would be inside that envelope. So the outer envelope would be like Mr. and Mrs. Liam McDougall and their address, and then the inside envelope it would say Liam and Marie, or if you wanted to invite their kids, Liam and Marie and Susie and Bill, kids' names, whatever. And if for some reason you wanted to invite Liam, but you didn't know what his girlfriend's name was, you could address the outer invitation to Mr. Liam McDougall, and the inner invitation would be Liam and guest. But you never, ever want to put and guest on the outer invitation because it's very gauche. I frown upon it. Most people frown upon it. So you wouldn't put Mr. Liam McDougall and guest, 5525 Oak Lane Road, etc., etc. That's not done. So if you have an invitation that doesn't have the inner envelope, which a lot of invitations these days don't, you just have the outer envelope, you've got to track down names of people. And if for some reason it's a person who's single, not dating anyone, but you want to give them a +1, even though you're not going to know this person because they're not, like I said, they're not dating anyone, just put Mr. Liam McDougall in the address on the outer envelope, and then inside put a little note, a handwritten note, like anything, on a little note card that says, please feel free to bring a guest with you, just let us know his or her name. So that way they know they can bring a guest, but you haven't ruined the look of the outer invitation by writing and guest, because no, it's icky. We don't do that. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And if you have any questions, you have a specific +1 situation that you need help with, feel free to ask me. You can leave a comment on this video, or you can reach out to me via email. My email address is prominently featured all over my website and my social media accounts, but it's risa@risajamesevents.com. So feel free to email me if you need help with anything. I am always happy to give my opinion. That's what I do. That's why I started this video series, to help more people do it right the first time so they don't have regrets later. And if you're in the Sacramento area and you need help with your wedding, give me a call. I would love to help you to make sure your wedding day goes smoothly. So that is all for now. I will talk to you next week. Thanks.